one. Now, let's start with post-fertilization structure and event. But before to that, let's try to understand that in fertilization, during fertilization, what had happened. So, you see, in fertilization of angiosperm, it resulted in double fertilization. Okay? That is male gamete and plus egg nucleus and which resulted in syngamy led to the formation of zygote. The second one, that is male gamete and plus polar nuclei. Polar nuclei, that is 2N, resulted in triple fusion, okay, which resulted in triple fusion led to the formation of endosperm. So, here once the fertilization has taken place with the egg nucleus, which resulted in the formation of zygote. Another one, the male gamete, that is when the pollen tube was forming during that time, this nucleus divides into two. So, one this male gamete, another this male gamete. So, male gamete plus egg nucleus. So, if you see the egg apparatus here, okay, this is the egg nucleus, synegrete. Here you have the filiform. These two are antipodal, and then this one the polar nuclei. Okay. So, one of the male gamete fused with this egg nucleus, which resulted in the formation of zygote. Another male gamete fused with this polar nuclei 2N, which results in the formation of endosperm. Now, after this fertilization has taken place, okay, after double fertilization, now we will see that how do this zygote gets transformed into embryo, okay, and what are the process of this endosperm formation. So, here post fertilization structure and event, which includes number one is formation of endosperm, number two is formation of embryo, that is embryogeny or embryogenesis. Now, first of all, formation of endosperm. So, in formation of endosperm, there are three subheading. Okay, one is formation of endosperm nucleus. First, endosperm nucleus will get formed. Number two is development of endosperm. Endosperm gets developed, and in different plants you will come across the formation of endosperm are different from one another. And the last one is fate of endosperm. That means what is the fate of endosperm. So, in this, first of all, this formation of endosperm nucleus. So, here in formation of endosperm nucleus, which I have written out here, the second nucleus, this one, the male gamete and plus polar nuclei, okay, when they fuse together, then it results in triple fusion, that is 3N. This 3N results in the formation of endosperm, nucleus. This endosperm nucleus, later on, what will happen? callus gets formed, cell wall gets formed, and finally it forms a nutritive tissue. Next part, development of endosperm. So how this endosperm gets developed? First of all, in different plants, the endospermic formation is different from one another. The development is different from one another. So there are three categories. There are three types. One you call it as free nuclear type. Number two is cellular type. And the third one is halobial type. So the first one, that is free nuclear type. In free nuclear type, what will happen when the endospermic nucleus are getting formed, the nuclei are set free. And then what happens, this nuclei, they go to the periphery part of this egg apparatus. As you can see here on the slide, that these are the free nucleus. They get arranged themselves in the periphery. And then the cell wall formation takes place. Okay? Various types of nutritive tissue gets formed. Here you can see the embryo, and then this embryo has been surrounded by the nutritive cell, and this nutritive cell is nothing but it is free nuclear type of endosperm. So more or less we often observe in the unripe coconut. In the coconut you have seen the water which contains vitamins, minerals. It is considered to be one of the nutritious food. Here you will find the endospermic nucleus are free in it. The next one comes the cellular type. In cellular type, the endospermic formation nucleus, here what will happen? One nucleus will get formed. It will be surrounded by the callus, it will be surrounded by the cell wall. Again, after that, again nucleic division will take place. Again, it will be surrounded by cell wall. And further, what will happen? The entire part of the structure will be covered by the cellular type of endospermic nucleus. So this way of one after the other formation which takes place, you call it as cellular type. The another one that is called as the halobial type. In halobial type, what will happen? It is an intermediate between the free nuclear type and cellular type. Intermediate between the free nuclear type and cellular type. In this case, what will happen? A part of it, here you can see one partition has been there. This is the lower part and this is the upper part. Some of the nucleus which are free will remain on the upper chamber. So here you see free nuclei. In this case, free nuclei, they are set up in the upper chamber. And the other part of the nuclei, that is micropylar chamber, this one is the micropylar chamber and this is the chalazal chamber. In the chalazal chamber, you will find that all these nuclei remain in the lowermost part, they do not divide. Okay? So when they do not divide, then what happens to the rest? Here you will come across that this free nuclear type, the callus, the cell wall formation will take place and it will start absorbing the nutrient from the nucellus and from the adjoining cells, thereby it becomes a nutritive tissue. This type of formation of endosperm, you call it as halobial type. So it takes place in some species of plant. Okay? So this is like a development of endosperm in different species of angiosperm. Now, let's move to the next one, that is fate of endosperm. Now, depending upon whether the seed has an endosperm or it does not contain a endosperm, it has been divided into two categories. One you call it as endospermic or albuminous seed. Another one you call it as non-endospermic seed or X-albuminous seed. So sometimes what will happen, in most of the Gramineae family, in most of the cereals crop, okay, the endosperm it persists, and thereby whatever the nutrients are available, it is there in the endosperm only, which provides it to the embryo. So when the endosperm remains, when the endosperm persists, then it is called as endospermic or albuminous seed. Mostly in all the cereals crop, that is rice, wheat, maize, okay, and various cereals crop, you will find there are all endospermic seed because endosperm remains. The other one, that is non-endospermic seeds or X-albuminous seed. Here what will happen? The endosperm slowly disintegrates, but all the nutrients are put up into the cotyledon. Okay, all the nutrients are put up into the cotyledon. As the seed germinates, during that time, whatever the nutrients is required for the growing embryo is provided by the cotyledon, not by the endosperm. And such type of seeds you call it as non-endospermic seed or X-albuminous seed, like bean, gram. Okay, this type of seeds are non-endospermic seeds or X-albuminous seeds. Now, this is all about the fate of, this is all about the first one, that is the endosperm formation or the development of endosperm. Now, let's move to the next part, that is this one, zygote. Okay, how the embryo formation takes place. So, formation of embryo or embryogeny or embryogenesis in angiosperm. So, here this zygote gets converted into an embryo. This embryo later on leads to the formation of plumule and radicle. But how it happens? Let's see through the flow chart out here. First of all, zygote. Here you see zygote. The zygotes divide into two. One is the suspensor cell, okay, basal cell. It is also called as basal cell. The another one is the embryonal cell. The suspensor cell will further divide into 6, 7, 8, and then it will form a hosterium. The middle part, that is the suspensor, and the other part, that is the hypophysis. That means, here I will show you in the next diagram. Okay, actually first of all, what will happen? This is the zygote. So, it divides into two unequal cells. Okay. So, the first one, this one, you call it as basal cell, or it is called as suspensor cell. The lower one, you call it as embryonal cell. Then after that, this part, the upper part, that is the suspensor cell. Suspensor cell, this part will keep on dividing like this. And then at the top, a bigger part of the cell will get formed. This part is called as hausteria or haustorium. Okay. Haustorium will form towards the micropylar region. Micropylar region. So, when I say micropylar region, let's this part. Okay. Suppose say so this part is the chalaza. Okay, this part is the chalazal. This part out here, this part is the micropylar region. Micropylar region. And then here you have the cells. These cells are called as the nucellus. This is called the nucellus. So, here haustorium gets developed at the micropylar region. That means towards this region. Now, the bigger part of the cell, after this cell has got divided. Which cell has got divided? The basal cell or the suspensor cell, that has got divided. This middle part of these 2, 3 cells, this one you call it as suspensor. Okay, this part you call it as suspensor. Okay, this one is the haustorium. Okay, this part is the suspensor. Okay. Okay, this part is the basal cell. Okay, this array of cell that you see, this one you call it as hypophysis. Okay, hypophysis. Still here you will find this one is the embryonal cell. Embryonal cell. Now, the 3 part here you see, this divides, then 2, 3 stacks of cells get formed, that is the suspensor, and the bigger one that gets formed, that forms the haustorium. And where it is forming? It is forming towards the micropylar region. When it forms towards the micropylar region, what does it do? It absorbs nutrient. Okay, it absorbs nutrient, and that nutrient is supplied to the embryonal cell. That's it. That is supplied to the embryonal cell. Now, later on, okay, when the embryo formation has taken place, then slowly what will happen, this suspensor cell, when a dicot embryo, okay, here we are talking about the dicot embryony, during the time after the embryo gets formed, then slowly this ostium and this suspensor cell will disintegrate. Hypophysis will lead to the formation of radicle plus root cap. Now the second one, that is the embryonal cell. The embryonal cell will turn into a mass of cell that is called as proembryo. Proembryo converts into a embryo. The embryo will form two parts. One is the two cotyledon will get formed, and it will also have the embryonal axis in the two cotyledon. In the embryonal axis, it will be divided into two parts. One part is called as the plumule, another part is called as the radicle. Plumule will get converted into shoot system, and the radicle will turn into a root system. This is in flow chart. Now let's see that in diagrammatically how does it happen or how does it take place. Okay, so here you see, just now I told you zygote. Okay, the zygote divides into two. That is the upper part, that is the suspensor cell, or the lower part, that is the embryonal cell. Then in the meantime, what will happen? This suspensor cell will further divide. Okay, it will further divide. At the same time, the lower part of the embryonal cell also will divide into 1, 2, 3, 4. Mitotic division will take place, and then it forms into a quadrant stage. Quadrant stage means that 4 cells has got formed, that is called as quadrant stage. At the same time, what is happening? The suspensor cell will further grow, okay, and an array of cell will get formed, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, okay, depending upon the species. And then the last one will form into a ostium cell. The work of this, the function of this ostium cell is to absorb the nutrients from the adjoining part of the cell, that is either from the chalaza, either from the nucellus, either from the adjoining part of the egg apparatus. Now, then after that, what you will find that this quadrant stage will undergo octant stage. Octant stage means that it has divided, the cell has divided into 8 number of cell. So 8 number of cell will get formed. This one you call it as the embryonal mass, or you call it as the proembryo. This proembryo, now further what will happen? This octant stage will undergo the periclinal division and anticlinal division. So when I say periclinal division, then you have to understand the cells, when they get divided, when they get differentiated, then they go towards the periphery. So once they go towards the periphery, then you will come across, they line up to the boundary. That is why they are called as periclinal division. And during that periclinal division, what will happen? The outermost part of this type of octant stage cells will lead to the formation of dermatogen. Okay, dermatogen later on leads to the formation of epidermis. So when I say EP means upper layer of any part of the cell, that is called as epidermis. So epidermis gets formed from dermatogen. Now what will happen? The inner mass of the cell will go under anticlinal division, and during that anticlinal division, what will happen? Each of the cell that is dividing internally, remain perpendicular to each other. Okay, they remain perpendicular to each other. They form a corpus. Okay, a mass of cells remain internally present inside, and you call it as corpus. And here the type of division internally that is taking place is anticlinal division. During that anticlinal division, what will happen? Here you will come across the cells are pushed apart. It leads to the formation of procambion. Okay, so when I say procambion and all the vascular strands and all get formed from the procambion, and then after that you have the ground meristem, that is the pith, that is the cortex, gets formed from the ground meristem. So this way the cell differentiation takes place after it has gone under which stage? It has gone on the octant stage. Then finally, after this cell has got aligned, differentiated, then what you will come across? You will come across slowly what will happen? The inner mass of the cells, okay, inner mass of this procambion, ground meristem, dermatogen and all, they bifurcate into two. Okay, they divide into two. And when they divide into two, then you will find a peculiar characteristic structure gets formed out here. This two structure that has got formed out here. Embryonal axis gets formed, and these two structure you call it as the cotyledon. And here you see in the embryonal axis, this part here you will come across the plumule gets formed. This upper part is the radicle. So inside the ovule, this internal structure, that means when the embryo are getting formed, then you see out here, this part, that is cotyledon, plumule, radicle and suspensor, they are towards the antipodal part, they are towards the chalaza part. And whereas the hosterium, you see, hosterium where it is present towards the micropylar region. So here you see, this part you can correlate with this one. This part is the endospermic nuclei, which will lead to the formation of endosperm. Then after that you see the two cotyledons. Then here you see this is the stem tip. Okay, here it's quite blurred out here. So this is the stem tip. This part is the root region, nucellus, okay, outer integument. This part outer integument. This part is the suspensor. This part is the inner integument, and the opening of this ovule you call it as the micropyle. On after the cell differentiation, after the cell has got differentiated, okay, the dicot embryony, okay, structure of a dicot embryo more or less looks in this manner. That means here you see these two are the cotyledon. The embryonal axis, in this case you will come across the upper part, that is the plumule, okay. This lower part, this part hypocotyle and epicotyle. Epicotyle will give rise to the plumule. The cells out here present in the epicotyle region. Epicotyle. When I say the word epicotyle, E-P-I-C-O-T-Y-L, epicotyle, upper cotyledon. Okay, EP means upper, cotyl means cotyledon, upper cotyledon. Okay, and when I say hypocotyle, hypo means lower cotyledon. So in this cotyledon you see, this part is epicotyle and the lower part is hypocotyle. Epicotyle will give rise to plumule and the hypocotyle will give rise to radicle. This plumule later on will, after getting the nutrients, after getting the proper factors for the germination, this will get converted into a shoot and the radicle into a root and root system. Okay, so this much is all about in the syllabus. Thank you.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of online class for the subject Commerce for ISC 2021. Okay. Today we will start a new chapter, that is chapter 3, sources of capital of a joint stock company. Okay. In this chapter basically we will understand the various long-term sources and short-term sources of finance for a joint stock company. Long-term sources like equity shares, preference shares, retained earnings, which are the part of equity type of capital, and debentures as well as long-term loans. So the last two comes under debt type of sources. At the same time, we will also understand various short-term sources of finance like short-term loans from commercial banks, bank overdraft, cash credit, factoring. So these are the 4 different ways by which a commercial bank provides financial assistance to a commercial organization. Okay? And we also understand about public deposits, intercorporate deposits, installment credits, and even customer advances. And today we will understand everything about the equity shares. Okay? So let's carry on. Now, meaning of equity shares. So first of all, let's understand what exactly is a share. You know, when the total capital of a company, let's say 10 rupees, is divided into different parts of equal value or denomination. So let me divide the total capital 10 into 10 parts of rupee 1. Okay? So one part will be termed as one share, part share. Okay? So here the value of one part is 1 rupee. Okay? And likewise, instead of dividing the total capital, as per my example 10 rupees, into 10 equal parts of rupee 1, I can even divide 5 equal parts of rupee 2. Then anybody investing 2 rupees in the company will be equals to 1 part, okay, or 1 share of the total capital, and the value is rupees 2. So this is how the term share is created and used in the capital market. So here we are discussing about equity shares. Okay? So equity shares are those shares which do not carry any preferential right regarding the payment of dividend and repayment of capital at the time of closing down of company. Hence, they are also known as ordinary shares. Okay? There is no security on these shares and they are entitled to the residual income of the company. It simply means whosoever who is going to subscribe equity share of the company, on that the company doesn't provide any security, okay, and when the company earns sufficient amount of profit, so after paying to outsiders like tax, interest on loan, interest to debenture holder, and even after paying dividend to the preference share holders, only the remaining profit will be available for the equity shareholders. Okay? So that's why equity shareholders bear the maximum risk in the company and they are considered therefore the real owners of the company. Okay? And the holders get the voting rights, so that's how they also have a say in the management and control of the business. Now, let us understand some of the features of equity shares. So the first feature is permanent source. The amount of capital raised by the company through the issue of equity shares is, kept within the business throughout the life, because it is returned only when the company is closed down. So that's why it is a permanent source. Okay. The next feature is highest risk bearing. So as I already said, so on the preference share, if you want to invest, you will not get any security. Okay. On that the return is not fixed, it depends upon the profit. Okay. So that's why you are taking the maximum risk by investing on the equity shares of the company. So the risk bearing here is maximum or highest. Okay. So let's move on to the third feature, voting right. So equity shareholders, they get the voting rights. Okay. So the right to vote in the annual general meeting when the company or the board of directors are going to take any strategic decision regarding the company. So, okay. So voting right depends upon the number of shareholdings. More the shares you acquire or subscribe, you will get more voting rights. So that is the feature of equity shares. Another feature is no fixed dividend or return. So when you invest your money on the shares, equity shares of the company, the return on that is called dividend. And here you don't get dividend at a fixed rate. Okay? So it depends upon the earning of the company. Right? Another feature of equity share is freely transferable. So the holders of the shares in the market, they can freely sell their shares and transfer the ownership to others. So they don't have to take the consent of the other shareholders. So that is the meaning of equity shares being freely transferable. Okay? Now, let us understand the advantages of equity shares, first from the shareholders' point of view and then from the company's point of view. So first of all, from the shareholders or the investors' point of view. So the first advantages of making investment on equity shares of any company is this type of shares are highly liquid. So it means as and when you want, you can easily you can easily sell the shares in the market and you can convert that into cash. So that is the meaning of equity shares being very liquid. Okay. So second advantage of equity shares to the shareholders is high dividend at the time when the company earns maximum profits. Okay? So after paying to outsiders, if the company has earned sufficient amount of profit, so whatever is left within the company, they have the full share on the remaining profit. Okay? So their earning will be high when the company is able to earn high profits. Okay? So that is the advantage. Second advantage is, as we already discussed in one of the features, voting right. So the equity shareholders get the voting right. So that will help to control or manage some of the affairs of the business. Okay? Another advantage of equity shares to the shareholders is limited liability. So it means here, if I purchase the share of rupees 10, okay, out of which if I have paid 7 and 3 is due, so I am liable to pay only the remaining amount, 3 rupees, of the share which I have subscribed. Okay? So that's why my liability is limited to the unpaid value of the shares that I have subscribed. So that is the meaning of limited liability here. Okay? Now let us understand the advantages of equity shares from the company's point of view. Okay? So from the company's point of view, the amount of share capital which the company raised through the issue of equity shares, that is the permanent source, because that is returned only when the company is closed down. Okay? Next advantage is no obligation to pay dividend. Okay? So the company doesn't have to pay dividend compulsory to the equity shareholder the way the company has to pay dividend at a fixed rate to the preference shareholders. So the payment of dividend to the equity shareholder, that totally depends upon the earning of the company and also the decision of the management. Okay? Next, base capital. The amount of capital raised by the company through the issue of equity share, that becomes the base capital, the main capital. Okay? And that will help us or the company to acquire the other type of capital. Okay? Loan capital or debt capital. So how much the outsiders are ready to invest, that depends upon how much the insiders, the owners, have invested. Okay? So when the company has more of equity share capital in its total capital, the company's financial position is assumed to be sound. Okay? So the company gets high credit worthiness. Next advantages to the company is no charge on the assets. It simply means when the company acquires equity share capital from the issue of the equity shares, on that company doesn't have to provide security. So that's why the company is able to use its assets freely, okay, either to sell or to give as security to raise loan or debt type of capital. So the equity share doesn't create any charge on the assets of the company. Okay. Now let us also understand the disadvantages or limitations of equity shares, first of all from the shareholders' point of view. The first limitation is perpetual control by few. How? It may happen that the first issue of equity share company made to few of the investors. Okay? So since they acquire the equity shares from the company and they get the voting right, so they have more control. And later on, when the company wants to issue any additional equity shares, that has to be first offered to the existing shareholders. And suppose they subscribe or they take those additional shares. Okay? So in that way, as and when new shares are to be floated or issued in the market, first of all, they have to be offered to the existing shareholders. And if they subscribe, that means there are only few shareholders who are controlling everything in the business. So they can start using their power or control in the management to fulfill their own interest and not the interest of the company. So that is the limitation. Second, high risk bearing. The shareholders, they have to take the maximum risk if they invest their money in the equity shares, because here again no security is given on the amount of investment, and the return also depends upon the profit as well as the decision of the management. So the equity shareholders, they take the maximum risk. Next disadvantage is unhealthy speculation. Okay? When the investors, they want to invest their amount of money on the equity shares of the company, there are brokers, underwriters, they are playing their role in the stock market. So they may provide wrong information, or they may show the rosy picture of the company. In this way, the innocent investors, okay, they suffer due to unhealthy speculation in the market, capital market. Okay. Next, another limitation of investment on the equity shares is no fixed dividend. As we already discussed that the return to the equity shareholder is termed as dividend, and it is not paid at a fixed rate. It depends upon the earning of the company. So that's why sometimes the equity shareholders, they don't get any return from the company. Okay. Now let us understand the disadvantages of equity shares from the company's point of view. Okay. The first limitation is manipulation of control. Okay. So as and when the company will be offering new equity shares in the market to more people, okay, so the company will be getting more owners. So the ownership or the control of the company will be diluted, because it will be distributed among many shareholders or the owners. And there is a possibility that the shareholders who subscribe the majority of the shares and they have the more voting right, so they start misusing their power in the company in order to fulfill their own interest. Okay. So that is the limitation. Second, danger of overcapitalization. One of the feature of equity share is once the amount of capital is raised, it is returned or repaid only when the company is closed down. Therefore, at times when there is a depression in the market, the production is low, financial requirement is low, at the time the company will face the problem of overcapitalization. So amount of capital which is there in the business will be more than that is required. So there is a chances of misuse of that capital. Okay. Next, costly source. Raising capital from the issue of equity share is quite costly, because here the company will have to design and print prospectus, so cost involved out there. So there is a cost in the form of commission to underwriters, brokerage to brokers, and so on. Okay. So that's why the equity share is costly for the company. Next, inflexible. So this type of shows that is raising capital through the issue of equity shares is inflexible, because sometimes if the company needs more amount of capital, it cannot go beyond the amount which it has specified in its document, so-called memorandum of association, the authorized capital. Okay. So company will not be able to raise the capital which is more than that is specified in its memorandum of association. Okay. So that is inflexible. Okay. Now we are moving to the last topic for the day, that is different types of equity shares. So the first type of shares here in my list is bonus shares. The general meaning of the term bonus is anything that we get in addition or extra to the normal. Therefore, bonus shares are such shares which are offered by the company free of cost to the existing shareholders, for which the existing shareholders, they don't have to pay. Okay. So it is a way to capitalize the reserves and accumulated profits. So if the company wants to convert its reserves and accumulated profits, surplus, so it can give additional shares to the existing shareholders free of cost. So that is termed as bonus shares. Moving on to the next type of shares and the issue, so-called right shares. According to Section 81 of the Companies Act 1956, when the company wants to issue additional shares, new shares in the market, those shares, first of all, will have to be offered to the existing shareholders. Means the existing shareholders, they have the right to get those additional shares. Okay? So, such shares which are offered to the existing shareholders, that shares or those shares are termed as right shares, and such issue is known as right issue. Okay? Next type of shares are known as sweat equity shares. This type of shares are issued to the hardworking or dedicated employees or directors, okay, to boost their morale, to give a kind of compensation to them for their continuous effort and hard work to bring the company into success. Okay? So these shares are offered to existing hardworking and dedicated employees at a concessional rate, at a discount. Okay? So this way, the company is trying to convert its dedicated and hardworking employees or directors to owners. Okay? So that they can more focus on the company's performance and success. Okay? So such shares are known as sweat equity shares. Next and the last, something known as ESOP, that is Employees Stock Option Plan. So this is a employees benefit scheme, a scheme where the company encourages its employees to purchase or acquire the share of the company itself, okay, so that the employees can become the owners, shareholders. So it is a technique of, aligning the employees with the shareholders to bring the employees as shareholders. It is because it is believed that when the employees are made as owners by giving them shares, they will focus more on the performance of the business, they will contribute more, and in that way the company will grow and become successful in the markets. So that is so-called employees stock option plan. Okay? So with this, I come to the end of today's session. So stay home, stay safe. Thank you.
Welcome back, children. After the short break, we will continue with our online classes beamed to you and reaching you courtesy KTV. So we will today begin with literature in English class. Now, if you remember correctly, before the break, we had finished all the 10 poems that were there in our ISC syllabus. I clarify one thing. The council has sent a reduced syllabus for 2021. And according to that, in literature in English, as far as the poems are concerned, one poem is no longer in your syllabus for 2021, and that is the poem Birches. Similarly, for short stories, you have 10 in your syllabus. Now, according to the reduced syllabus for 2021, one story has been removed. The story is to build a fire. So 9 poems, 9 stories, and the play The Tempest. These are, as of now, in your syllabus for 2021. So since we have finished the poems, today I'm going to start with the short stories. And the first story that I have chosen is The Story of an Hour. Now I have written something above that. The Dream of an Hour. Remember, this was the first title of the story. But when the story was republished in 1895, the name was changed, the title was changed a bit, and it was named or renamed The Story of an Hour. The story is by the American novelist Kate Chopin, or Chopin, the way you pronounce it. She was a feminist writer of the 19th century. Remember, feminism was not that popular during her times. Therefore, we can say that she was way ahead of her times. Now let us see what is there in this very short story. The story begins with the writer presenting to us the character of a lady, Mrs. Mallard, Louise Mallard. She was a heart patient suffering from a heart ailment. Therefore, when the news came that her husband, Bentley Mallard, had died in a railroad accident, great care had to be taken to pass on this news or information to Mrs. Mallard, because there was the fear that she may not be able to tolerate this shocking, sad news, and she might die because she was a heart patient. Now let us see how this news had reached Mrs. Mallard. Actually, the husband Bentley Mallard had a friend called Richards. This Richards had gone to the newspaper office. And in the newspaper office, he had come to know about a railroad accident. And he had seen the list of those who had died in that accident. And Richards had seen the name of Bentley Mallard on the top of the list of those who had died in that accident. So what happened was, Richards first clarified whether this news was authentic or not. After getting the confirmation that this news was true and authentic, Richards came back to the house of Mrs. Mallard, and Richards passed on this news or information to Josephine. Josephine was the sister of Mrs. Mallard. And when Josephine got this news, she passed on this sad news to Mrs. Mallard. But Josephine did not pass on this information or news to Mrs. Mallard directly. She spoke haltingly in broken sentences, giving indirect hints that Mrs. Mallard's husband, Bentley, was no more. He had died in a railroad disaster. Obviously, the moment Mrs. Mallard got this information, she reacted to it. But she reacted in a way which was not very common among ladies. women would generally react in a particular manner on getting the information of the death of a husband. But Mrs. Mallard behaved a bit differently. She did cry, she did weep, and after crying and weeping for some time, when the news of the death of her husband had a cathartic effect on her, meaning when her sorrow and sadness became a bit lesser after crying, she decided to go to her room because she said she wanted to be alone. Now, Mrs. Mallard went to her room, locked the door of the room from inside, and then she went near the window. Near the window, there was a very roomy and spacious armchair. She sat down on that armchair near the open window and looked at the outside. Now, what was outside? Imagine it had rained. The rain had swept away the dirt and the dust from the green leaves of the trees. So, Mother Nature was looking bright and beautiful. She could hear a hawker or a peddler passing by shouting the wares or goods that he was selling. She could also hear the sound of a faraway song sung by somebody. She could hear the chirping and the twittering of sparrows. And when she looked at the sky, she could see patches of the blue sky in between the broken pieces of clouds in the sky. We will come to the symbolisms of all these later when we come to the end of the story. Now let us see what was going on in the mind of Mrs. Mallard when she was alone, seated on that armchair in her room near the window. Let me tell you, she was sorry that her husband was dead. The point is, she was having mixed emotions at that time. Obviously, she was sad, sorrowful, dejected that her husband was dead. But at her subconscious mind, something was going on. What exactly was going on? What were her real feelings? She could not describe that at that moment. But she had a feeling that something joyful, something happy, something pleasurable was at her subconscious mind. She was trying her best to keep that away. She wanted to remain submerged in her sorrow and sadness. But however she tried, she could not resist the arrival of that happiness and joy in her life. And accordingly, through her mouth, something came out. A word which is very significant in this story. She said, free, free, free. Actually, in her subconscious mind, the happiness, the joy, the pleasure that had come was that finally she had gained freedom. She was now on her own. She was free from her husband. Now the question arises, Why did she feel so? Didn't she love her husband? Did not the husband love her? The point is, here is the complexity in the story. Yes, sometimes, not always, she did love her husband. And there was no question about the husband not loving her. And here was the problem. The problem was the husband loved her passionately, possessively. And the problem with the husband was the husband probably tried to impose his will and desires on his wife. And the wife had to bend and surrender herself to the will and the desires of her husband. That is why she had always felt that her marriage was a suffocating one. It was a depressing marriage. She had always felt suppressed in her marriage because she had a feeling that she did not have any freedom or independence or her own will in the marriage. She had to follow, she had to do whatever the husband wanted her to do. So she always had a feeling that she was a victim of the oppressive desires and the suppressive desires of her husband. This possessiveness of the husband, this too much of love from the husband was not at all good, because nothing in excess is good. She wanted to be free from this suffocating, depressing, suppressing marriage. And the death of Bentley in that railroad disaster had given her that opportunity to be free, to be on her own, and to lead the life that she had wanted to live on her own terms and conditions. Therefore, the joy in her subconscious mind, the happiness in her subconscious mind, the pleasure in her subconscious mind. Imagine that situation where she extends her hands out of the window as if welcoming this newfound independence, freedom, pleasure, joy, and happiness in her life. So you see that what she had done in front of others, crying and weeping, as if she was heartbroken to hear the news of her husband's death, and the way she thought, reacted, behaved inside her room, they were totally different. At this moment of time, her sister Josephine was knocking at the door from outside, appealing and pleading with Mrs. Mallard to open the door. Finally, she got up from the chair, went to the door, opened the door, and Josephine, holding Mrs. Mallard in her arms, the two went downstairs. Now comes the twist in the story. When the two were going downstairs, the front door of the house opened and her husband, Bentley Mallard, walked in. Obviously, Richards tried his best to shield the view of the husband from Mrs. Mallard. But Mrs. Mallard had seen the husband and she fell down dead. When the doctor came and examined Mrs. Mallard, he said that Mrs. Mallard had died due to excess of joy and happiness on seeing her husband come home alive. Actually, Bentley Mallard was nowhere near the scene of that railroad disaster. He had never died in that rail accident. It was a fake, false news. It was untrue. Now the question arises, why did Mrs. Mallard die? Did Mrs. Mallard die of the shock of seeing the husband alive whom she had expected to be dead? Or did she die of the shock of the end of her dream of being free and independent and to live on her own terms? We don't know. Even though the doctor said that she had died out of happiness. So you see, the story is ending in an ironical manner. In the beginning of the story, Bentley Mallard was supposed to be dead, and Mrs. Mallard was supposed to be enjoying the free life. The story ends in the opposite way. The one who was supposed to be dead returns home alive, and the one who was supposed to live and celebrate and enjoy life was dead. This way, if you look at it, this story of Kate Chopin ends in a way which we usually find in the stories of the American writer O. Henry, famous for his short stories. William Sidney Porter, whose pen name was O. Henry. O. Henry's stories, as you had seen in ICSE, The Hearts and Hands, always have an unexpected twist in the end, and the stories end the way readers never expected the stories to end. There is a twist in the tale. This story also has a twist in the tale because the person supposed to be alive dies, and the person who was reported dead comes home alive. The last thing that I would like to discuss about this story is the symbolisms. This story has plenty of symbolisms. Mrs. Mallard was sitting near the window on an armchair. The window symbolizes the gateway to freedom which she would enjoy now that her husband was dead. The open window symbolizes the path to freedom. The armchair was spacious, big. What did Mrs. Mallard want in her life? She wanted space of her own. She did not want to be suffocated, depressed, or suppressed. Clouds, the clouds in the sky, the broken patches of clouds in the sky refer to the sorrows, the sadnesses, the depressions that she had suffered in her married life. In between those broken patches of clouds, what could be seen? Patches of the blue sky. These patches of the blue sky, visible in the sky in between the broken clouds, symbolize her desire for independence and freedom, her desire to live her life in her own terms. What was outside? It had rained. Everything seemed green and fresh like spring. The weather or the climate outside represents the new beginning in the life of Mrs. Mallard, which she was expecting after the death of her husband. She was expecting a new life, a new beginning, a life that she would lead on her own terms. When she was sitting outside near that window, she had heard a song coming, somebody singing far away, and broken lyrics could enter her ears. What is a song? A song is an expression of joy and happiness. So the broken pieces of the song that entered her ears symbolize her newfound freedom, her dream of leading a life where she will not have to surrender her will and desires to anybody else, a life which she will live the way she had always wanted to live. So you will have to be very careful, my dear students, regarding these symbolisms in the story. The window, the armchair, the clouds, the patches of the blue sky, the spring outside, and the song heard. And most importantly, you will have to refer to the unexpected, unusual ending to the story, which is more like the ending of the stories of the writer O. Henry, where the story ends in a way which was never expected by the readers. You had seen it in ICSE, as I had told you in the story Hearts and Hands. The one who was supposed to be the convict turns out to be the marshal. The one who was supposed to be the marshal turns out to be the convict. This is something the readers had never expected. Here also, the one who was supposed to be alive dies, and the one who was reportedly dead comes home alive. So that is the story of an hour, because from the beginning till the end, all happens within an hour. That is why the story of an hour, originally titled The Dream of an Hour. What was the dream? The dream of Mrs. Mallard to lead a free, independent life, free from the suppression, suffocation, depression that she had suffered in her married life due to the excessive, possessive love of her husband, Bentley Mallard. Thank you. Stay home. Stay safe.